One wheel Pint X sensor insensitivity. There's plenty of people complaining about it, so most people are aware of the issue. It seems like Future Motion, well, they did add an extra layer of plastic over the sensors, so now the sensors suck. And a lot of us are experiencing the mount of shame, and it's super frustrating when you're at a red light and it turns green and you want to take off and you flop over like a fish out of water and look like a moron and feel like an idiot. It's really frustrating. I think the design of the sensor is the problem. The fact that it's has this nice fat dead zone in the middle on this flat plane. I think it's crazy that, I don't know, over 20% of the area of the foot pad is not covered in sensor coverage. Covered in sensor coverage. Wow. The fact that the sensors are on the same level, essentially, as the dead zone, well, anybody who steps onto it with a slight deviation from being perpendicular is going to have issues activating both sensors at once, especially with that additional layer of plastic. So I figured I could come up with a pretty simple solution, raising the elevation over those sensors so that my feet were only pressing or primarily pressing specifically on the sensor area versus right in the dead zone. You know, I have flat feet. I wear different types of shoes. I hate that only my Vans would sort of consistently activate the sensors, and that's with my feet perfectly perpendicular. But I prefer to ride, with toes facing forward, a little bit, at least diagonally. There were several occasions where I would be cruising at like 15 miles an hour, through, say, the mall parking lot, and the fucking nose would just drop out of nowhere. So I'd have to run it out. Luckily, I never fell on my damn face when that happened. I don't know how, because I'm very clumsy, so I got very lucky in those instances. That happened, I don't know, 3 or 4 times before I finally wrote Future Motion saying, "What the hell?" And they essentially came back with, "Oh, your foot placement, you're standing wrong. You need to be perfectly perpendicular." Terrible fucking design of the sensor. I'm sorry. But the solution that I came up with has completely alleviated every single issue I've had. I have had 0 mounts of shame with this. I feel better control. Now I can do slow turns, heel side or toe side, without the fucking board just disengaging for no reason, because it thinks I'm not on it anymore. I think there are major issues with the sensor design clearly the GT is having plenty of issues of its own, but the Pint X, and I'm guessing the Pint has the same sensor issues now as well, but I think it's just a flaw with how they design the sensors themselves. I feel as though if they had a supplementary, like maybe a binary sensor in the rear, it doesn't even have to be in the rear pad, but it could be, over the battery pack, just indicating whether there is still a foot on the rear pad or not. Because if there's a foot on the rear pad and you're going over 1 mile an hour, the board should never disengage, right? But no, there's only sensors on the front. So with these shitty new sensors, you can be cruising at fucking 15 miles an hour and it thinks, "Oh, you jumped off the board." I don't know, it doesn't check. I don't know, I'm not an engineer, but I'm guessing it could check the current load, right? I mean, it should be able to check the load. If the load all of a sudden becomes a lot lighter and there's no activation on either sensor, sure, maybe that would shut it off. But if the load is the same, I mean, the motor has to have a way to determine what the load is, right? So I feel like the fact that these boards are just shutting off at cruising speed is a huge, huge issue, and Future Motion needs to take care of that. But in the meantime, I figured, okay, well, this solution that I came up with, it's super simple, but it's completely alleviated my issues. I've had no mounts of shame. I have had no heel side or toe side, slow turning disengagements. So all it is are these 3D printed strips. These ones are just made out of, it's just a resin with a light texture on top to add to the adhesion of the grip tape. So essentially, I print these out. Okay, cameras. I printed these out, added some strips of grip tape, heat it up, make sure it's adhered really well, and then I will put a 3M adhesive on the rear. And I've been riding with these things, so one on each side of the sensor. I've been riding with these for over a month now, and I've had absolutely no issues. They're super light, so, well, let's be honest, it takes a lot of pressure to activate the Pint X sensors now, so I don't think you have to worry about ghosting the same ways you do with the GT. But because this isn't, you're not having to remove the grip tape or anything, you're slapping these puppies right over the grip tape. And since you're just standing on it, you don't have to worry about it coming off because, the more you use them, the more pressure or that adhesive is going to be receiving, and the better integration it's going to have with that grip tape up front. So I've had absolutely no issues with these. It's incredibly encouraging now because I can just mount and immediately start going. I don't have to wait for it to level out anymore. I don't have to hope that it activates. I can literally just go, just like I used to do on my XR. Every single time now it works. I don't know what to call them. I don't know if I want to call them speed bumps. It kind of gives you this concave feel. So that's really nice. You don't have to swap out your front. It gives you this nice concave feel. And you feel much more control, throwing it forward and back versus just trying to do that with that flat plane on the front, So I don't know if I want to call them speed bumps, ConcaBinds, Mountease. I don't know. I'd love some feedback on those. It's a super simple solution. I mean, in reality, you could probably fabricate something up yourself pretty simply. Again, it's just this really thin piece of plastic. I think I did, let me see, I don't remember. I don't have my calipers here. I think it's 1 or 2 millimeters. And then a piece of grip tape, and then a piece of 3M adhesive on the rear. So they're super light. Sure as shit, not enough weight to activate the sensors. I've never had any false positive on that. Obviously, my usage is just anecdotal. So I would love to get some other people to test these out and get some feedback on them, see what they like, see what they don't like. I threw the design together. I'm not a 3D model or anything. I threw the design together, in 15 minutes or so. It probably takes someone 2 seconds to do this if they knew what the hell they were doing. But I don't 3D model enough to really be comfortable. I only do it every, so often. But I would love to get some volunteers to test these out. I really think people will be happy with them. Again, it completely alleviated the issues that I was having with the goddamn sensors. So I think people will be pretty stoked once they see the results and just see how consistent the sensors will perform when you're using these things. So if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.